A show about climate change and tips for tackling it.
Hi, welcome to Mundo Blue. Today we have with us Emma. And Emma's going to talk about the capstone project that she has going on at NAU, which is tree shading. And she's going to also talk about why it's important, why tree shading is important. So take it away, Emma. Thank you for coming on Mundo Blue.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited because this has been something that's a little new to me. I didn't really know a lot going into my capstone project originally about tree shading. I just knew it was a major issue, and we are actually focusing on the community of Sunnyside in Flagstaff, which is super awesome. And so basically the reason why we chose this capstone project, because I'm working with three other girls in my public health major, but the reason we kind of picked this one was because tree shading, especially in Flagstaff, is a major issue, especially for like low-income communities. And in the area, a lot of Siberian elms kind of dominate like houses, and like because they can spread through both through like the vines or like the roots, through the roots, but also through like the seeds, and so they kind of spread really rapidly. And we realized that this was a major issue because they can damage homes, like, and they grow at super fast rates.
Oh, yeah.
It's so bad. And like, so it damages like a lot of properties, and we realized that like people don't know that these are like an invasive species. And so we are kind of focusing on like, one, planting more trees and like creating that shading for communities, but also like trying to advocate for getting rid of Siberian elms, so that when people plant trees, they realize that like there's certain kinds of trees that aren't going to damage their properties, but also provide that shading. And another reason why tree shading is so important is because there's a lot of studies that have been done about like when there's not a lot of trees in the area, the respiratory disease is higher, and so like it causes a lot of issues with that. And also skin disease also increases, like skin cancer, because when you're outside and don't have that ability to find shading from a tree, the likelihood obviously being in the sun all day, like you're going to get skin cancer a lot faster. And so that's why it's been such a big issue. And it's been really cool to learn about it because you realize how intertwined all these issues are, and like how important it is that when you plant one tree, how big of a difference it makes, but also planting the right tree.
That's a really big point,
Yeah.
planting the right tree. Invasive species, we have so many of them.
We do.
And I know my friend Scott runs an invasive weeds pull, a weed pull each year. And it's, like you're saying, they can damage houses and stuff like that. So, one thing you did say that I want to go back to is the low-income areas being more susceptible to climate change and things that are going on. How did you find that out? And again, touch on again how you think that can be eradicated.
Kind of like how we can fix that issue. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I mean, in areas like where like a lot of low income housing or like housing like that is built in areas where they don't really think about placing and like with trees around them or like sidewalks or like safety. And so a lot of times the people that are building these homes don't take into account like that trees are a big issue, or trees are a big like thing that we need to have around us. And so low-income housing is like placed in areas, and then they kind of just forget about it. So they forget to plant trees, they forget to like help like make sure we have all these like different parts of the community. And so the reason why tree shading and low-income housing is like really important to like focus on is because these houses like typically don't have AC in the summer, and then in the winter, like if they don't have like heating and stuff, the trees can really play a big role in this, because if you have trees that shed or like kind of shed their leaves, then you can in the winter time when the leaves fall off, you get the heat coming through the home, and in the summertime it regulates the internal temperature of the household.
Of course.
And so it's like that's something that people don't think about, because I know when I was driving by, there's like a country club, like I used to work as a server in a country club in Flagstaff, and there's trees everywhere, like there's kind of dominated by trees, and so like that's regulating their internal temperature of their homes. However, in low-income communities, it's not. And so like typically one thing that we learned that was shocking to us was in low-income communities where there's not a lot of trees around, the internal temperature of their home is 20 degrees higher in the summertime. Yes. Than in other areas. And so like that's insane. That's major. Like the fact that people don't know that is crazy. And the thing is too is even by like learning just like how to plant a tree, like and learning where the best place is the south corner of your yard or the west corner of your yard, and because that kind of where the sun hits, and so when the summertime, like the tree will block the sun, but in the wintertime it will let the sun through. And learning these little things and learning what trees to like plant is so big, because this problem can, like, we can get rid of this problem, but not many people know about it.
Yeah, I consider myself pretty savvy.
Yeah.
And to hear you say it's 20 degrees hotter in these homes, I know that.
Yeah.
But hearing that number,
Yeah.
when you hear that number, it's a bit of a shock.
It's a bit of a shock for sure, yeah.
And it's so interesting because, like I said, I consider myself pretty savvy, but just hearing that number or saying what's going on is, I think, a real boon for people.
It's crazy.
Because now I know that it's 20 degrees hotter.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yep.
And so I can say all day, oh, I don't think this is right, or I think this is going to happen, or I think that is going to happen. But having a fact, having the fact is really informative.
Yeah, that's what was crazy to us, because I live in an area that doesn't have a lot of trees around me in Flagstaff. So I mean, I'm a college student. Like, I don't want to pay a lot for rent. And so I found, like, I didn't realize how big of an issue it was until in the middle of summertime in Flagstaff, no AC in our household. It was just blazing hot. And it was so uncomfortable all summer long. And it was unfortunate because I was like, because I'm not able to plant trees in my household because I rent and like the HOA doesn't like it. However, like, if we are able to plant these trees and we are able to make that impact, like how big of a difference like it could make.
So do you plan on talking to, or have you talked to the HOA?
No, I haven't, but that should be the next step for sure. I know I've been focusing typically right now on Sunnyside and like that, but I would really love to talk to my HOA and like do that in my own community, because I notice it myself, because my room faces the sun directly, and so in the summertime it's almost unlivable. It's so hot in my room.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's, it's something simple like planting a tree.
I know.
Can make such a difference.
Yeah, it's amazing to see like how we don't think about those little things in our communities, because we're like, oh, it's just hot in my house. But it's like, no, we have a fix. We know what we can do to prevent it. It just might take a couple of years, because trees, like, obviously different rates of growth. But the one that we have right now been advocating for, it's not native to Flagstaff, but it is a good tree to plant because it's non-invasive and it grows pretty rapidly, are the red maple trees. Those ones are really good because they grow about 5 feet a year.
And it's non-invasive.
Non-invasive, yeah. And so it's non-invasive, but it grows about 5 feet a year, and it's a pretty sturdy like tree. And it's really nice because, like I said, sheds in the winter time, but then the leaves are full in the summer. And so that's kind of what you want to look for when you're trying to find a tree to plant.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know much about tree planting in cities and the numbers about how the numbers and their I'm going to edit this out. Do you know much about the the temperature reduction in cities by planting trees?
Well, I don't know too much about the reduction in like the temperatures by planting trees. I do know that in cities, in areas around the city where there are more trees, crime rate actually decreases.
Really?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a study that we found that said that like on city blocks that had a higher number of trees, the crime rates were lower when there was more trees around. And I think that kind of has to do with, this is just like an assumption, but with that fact, like it kind of made sense, like when you're walking outside in the summertime, like you want to find shade because obviously the heat is going to be coming down on you. You're going to feel like super hot, and so people obviously always try to seek out shade. And so my connection to that is just an assumption, but what makes sense is people don't want to go outside when it's hot in a city in the summertime and you don't have shade around you, and so people are less likely to be active outside unless they have like a purpose to. And so like by planting trees, like in creating more shade, like we can reduce also crime rates and increase like community with people like meeting outside and like creating that community in cities also.
You know, I was watching a television show a long time ago, and I heard something that was really profound, and they were talking about the religious the conflict in the Middle East. Why is there conflict in the Middle East? And one person said, well, because it's a religious conflict. And the teacher said, no, it's because it's hot and there's no water. And so tree planting would be the same thing.
Exactly.
You know, it reduces the heat. So people get more desperate when they're hotter.
Exactly.
And so sociologically speaking, that makes sense that the crime rate is lower in a tree area because people aren't feeling as desperate.
Exactly. It's really interesting to see how big of an impact tree shading has on a community, because it's not like these facts are known to people. Like most people don't realize these certain like little things that really impact a community. It's really interesting.
Well, before we go, tell us a little bit about you. We jumped into trees right away.
I know, we did.
And so we don't, who are you, Emma? How'd you end up in this project?
So my name is Emma. I'm actually a senior in my NAU capstone, and so this was actually my capstone project. That's how I got involved in it. And we got to kind of choose what we were interested in. To me, I've always been a big advocate for environmental health. That's one of my specific areas that I really love. And so that's kind of how I chose it. And then it was super cool because through NAU and through the public health major, they actually paired us with Flagstaff Open Spaces in the community, which has McMillan Natural Area, which is actually a pretty short walk from here. And it's super cool because we partnered with them because they want people to also realize that in Sunnyside and in the community, like how close it is, and like they provide tree shading and like an area for people to walk around and like have a little escape from the heat in the summertime. And that was kind of like how we got partnered with them. And it's been super cool to like get to meet with our community partners and find ways together as a group where we can really improve trees and the tree shading issue in Flagstaff and in Sunnyside.
So you mentioned that you're a public health major.
Yeah.
The connection between environmental health, public health, all of it is intertwined? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so they're all, environmental health is like a subcategory of public health, which is super interesting. And how that kind of correlates to public health is when there's environmental issues like lack of trees, that increases respiratory disease and increases skin cancer, and they kind of all are interconnected. And so learning about the trees and how it affects, it's like as a public health issue. Like the lack of trees is a public health concern because we want people to get outside, be active, and also have that have access to like better air quality too. And I know being at 7,300 feet, like we need the best air quality we can get. So
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on Mundo Blue. I really like the idea of tree shading, and I appreciate that you picked Sunnyside because Sunnyside is a really old neighborhood in Flagstaff. It's been around for a long time, and it saw many of the building problems that you mentioned. And so, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your idea about tree planting, period,
Yeah.
and the relationship to public health.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal.
It is.
Like you said, people don't think about that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really
So,
interesting.
yeah. Well, Emma, thank you very much for being on Mundo Blue. Hopefully, plant a tree, right?
Yeah, plant a tree, and also there's so much information online too about the different types of non-invasive trees, and so it's super awesome to get to learn about that south and the west corner of your homes and those kind of locations. There's some major things to think about, but when you plant a tree, you're really helping out your community and yourself by creating that heat regulation and also improving your own health too. So
Great.
yeah.
Okay. Well, then we'll leave it at that. Plant
Thank
a
you
tree.
so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good day.